So I'm just gonna say let's get started. And I, I'll introduce myself. I'm Karen Majewski. I'm the current president, just took office of Polish American Historical Association. For those of you who may not be familiar with who we are, PAHA, we're a worldwide community of scholars and just aficionados of Polish American history or Polish history and culture in the diaspora, wherever that may be. Um, we hold a 3-day conference every year, every January. And in 2026, we'll be in Chicago. So we hope I know that we'll see some of you there. In addition, we sponsor a book series through Ohio University Press that's been going on for something like 20 years. We also have a new, smaller profile book series that we're sponsoring ourselves that we're really excited about. We've got numerous projects that we do all year long. Our members, Anya Mueller works on a project called Objects That Speak. And so if any of you have things in your home or in your family history that tell a certain story, she's always looking to explore those stories. We post them on our website. Um, and Did I miss anything? Oh yeah, we have a memoirs project as well. So we're always soliciting those memoirs, just trying to chronicle and uh, and and honor and make visible the history and culture of Poles wherever they may be in the world um, throughout history. So today we've got Ewa Barczyk talking about the book that she just edited, um, Footprints of Polonia. But I'm going to turn this over to Anya to moderate. She is the past president of PAHA and the Pajewski um, chair of Polish and I think Polish American Studies. You can correct me if I've got that a little bit wrong
That's
at
correct.
the University of Michigan, Dearborn. Oh, and one other initiative that we do that I wanted to mention is you'll notice at the end of this presentation, you'll see a barcode. We work really hard to recruit scholars, young scholars from all over the world. And we have a lot of young scholars from overseas. And we're currently initiating a program to collect donations to help pay their fees because you can imagine how much it costs to attend a conference overseas, especially if you're a student. So you'll see that at the very end of the presentation. But unless there's something major that I missed, I'm going to turn this over to Anya and to Ewa.
Thank you, Karen. The one thing I would add is that the Objects That Speak, the project that features objects that some of you present here shared with me. For example, Henrietta Nowakowski shared with me an incredible story of some of the objects that she has in her possession. So now the person that is helping me with this project is Ivona Flis, also a PAHA member and a wonderful historian archivist who is really adding an extra depth to those stories. So I would encourage all of you to find objects in your homes, in your possessions, even in your memories that you would like to share with us and help promote the Polish American history that way. Okay, let me now introduce Ewa Barczyk. Ewa Barczyk received her master. I just have a dog reacting to somebody knocking on the door. I do apologize. This is the beauty of doing things on Zoom. So Ewa Barczyk received her MA in Slavic Studies from the University of Kansas and her Master of Library and Information Science from Southern Connecticut State University. She retired in 2016 from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, where she had been the Associate Provost and Director of Libraries. One of her focuses was engagement in many international initiatives with libraries in Poland, Taiwan, and Africa. She published numerous articles in library publications and recently authored a chapter in Globalized Library. She is very active in Polish organizations that promote Polish heritage. She's currently the president of the Polish American Library Association, which provides resources and opportunities for librarians to promote Polish materials, culture, history. She's past president and continues to serve on the board of Polanki, the Polish Women's Culture Club in Milwaukee, organizing Polish displays and various cultural events through the community. She was the recipient of PAHA Skalne Civic Achievement Award in 2011, and currently is one of the editors of PAHA's numerous projects. She's really one of the foundational block of all PAHA's initiatives. And of course, here she joined us to talk about her most recent project, book titled Footprints of Polonia, Polish Historical Sites Across North America. Ewa, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Anya. And wow, with that build up, I think the audience will have high expectations, so I hope I can meet that. But good morning, good afternoon, whatever time zone you're in. And if you're like us in the Midwest, you're kind of snowed in. So I hope that my presentation will be a little bit of a diversion before you have to dig yourself out. Saying that, what I mean is it's not going to be a heavy theoretical thing. I hope that I will inspire you to learn more about what's in the book that I edited. And so I'm not going to go into a history lesson since I see so many esteemed historians there. But we know that wherever Poles settled in North America, they left what I call footprints or traces of their contributions to their environment. So that was really the driving force behind compiling this book to gather what still exists, what new things are coming up, and how they've evolved over time. And I could go all the way back, to 1608 to, Jamestown settlers, the earliest Polish settlers. But really, this is more about the contributions of where the bulk of, the diasporas from the Zachlebem, 1870s to World War I, and then the post-World War II, then solidarity. So we'll see, and I'll talk about the differences between the different emigre groups and the kind of things they focused on, because their contributions really reflect their values and importance of things in their life. As my mother always said, Polacy są wszędzie. So we look on this map on the left, and it shows Polish Americans in the U.S., and not surprising for all of us, the largest concentration, of course, is the East Coast and the Midwest, where the manufacturing jobs were. But there's little circles throughout the country. So I was able to identify physical things for 47. Now I found 48 states. And then also, since I respect the sovereignty of Canada, showing you their settlements, which is also very similar to the US in terms of it's spread out across the borders. And in the US, we have about, close to 10 million who claim Polish American heritage, and in Canada, about 1 million, but proportionally to population, it's very, very similar. So this is the book that I hope many of you either have on your bookshelf or have seen, and if not, I hope I inspire you to buy it. I'll talk a little bit about what's in there, what's not, and why. So, not surprising, I focus on churches, statues, monuments. If there's large collections in libraries or museums, public art installations by Polish or Polish American artists, relics, museum, these are the kind of things that you will find. What is excluded there was a advisory board, and some of the members are on here today. We decided we can't possibly include everything, because then it would not serve you well as a guidebook. would be several volumes long. Plus, Jim Pula had already edited the Polish American Encyclopedia, and we didn't want to compete with that. So commercial entities, you can imagine if I included every deli in Chicago, we would have a book on that. Organizations, with the exception if they have physical accessible buildings, like I'll use Chicago, PNA, PRCU. There are other organizations that have buildings, those are included. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of streets, parks, highways named most often after Kościuszko or Pułaski, and it didn't include those. They're there. Or some buildings that they've been so converted, because as Polish neighborhoods shift, some of these buildings get demolished or they can get converted. If nothing of the Polishness remains, we didn't. So the focus was on the built environment. That's why didn't include mountains and lakes and things. So things that are, that humans created. One of the first things we had to decide was, well, what are we going to include? I mean, these items we talked about, but what is Polonia? What's the Polish diaspora here in North America? And as you know from Polish history, Polish borders have shifted and changed, expanded, shrunk. So the groups that have been part of the Polish Commonwealth are numerous, and as well as multi-ethnic, multi-religious, and how far do we go? How inclusive? We decided to kind of focus on a mono-ethnic approach here, the way Polonia neighborhoods define themselves, primarily Catholic, Polish-speaking. The other groups often have their own, they've already put out guidebooks, they have their own organizations. So to make it, part of it was just practical and manageable. This was our definition of what we approached. To give you an idea what it looks like, a typical format.
Eva, we lost your PowerPoint. I'm sorry. I'm not sure whether
that
was intentional, but
no,
we don't have access to your PowerPoint anymore.
Okay, let me just go back into Zoom. Is that where whoops. You're not seeing anything now, right?
I don't.
Oh,
it says I'm screen sharing.
I
I
see
can
it.
see the
Okay,
presentation.
so I'm sorry. So it's my fault. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Sorry for interruption.
Okay, I'm back on page, no problem. I mean, I'm known to click things and, blow everything up. So we did limit it to approximately 200 words per, just to keep some kind of a semblance here of equanimity. Very easily accessible, that it's alphabetical, arranged by country. So Canada, United States, and then there are countries that you'll hear about in Latin America. And then within the country, the states, provinces, go into the city, and then alphabetically the entries. Extensive index, a lot of cross references, both in the text and in the index. Also, in some entries, you'll see what I call sidebars or ribbons. So things that, kind of spanned larger areas or weren't quite here, but it was an interesting information about the area. So for Milwaukee, for example, there's a sidebar about Polish bowling alleys, and you can guess who wrote that. And there are other areas that may have walking trails and things. So that kind of, information is also included. Now, when you read the story of Polish immigrants, there's a common theme that the church, the Catholic Church, was the focus of the community, of the Polish neighborhood. And so one of the first things the settlers did, is, particularly in the industrial cities, was to build a church. And knowing that, they came here penniless, the churches that they built were magnificent. And these churches became the center of Polonia. Often, the pastor was the one with the education and became the leader. And the churches were not just a place of worship, but also community they had help groups, organizations, schools, and that's where the parents sent their children to keep their heritage and their Polish language skills. So these churches were very, very important and magnificent. And these are examples of what is colloquially known as Polish cathedral style. They are not really cathedrals, but they're often they have the characteristics of twin towers and large size. And in doing this research, the majority of them were named St. Stanislaus or Our Lady of Częstochowa. This was which caused confusion for me when I was trying to organize this, but not all of them are the same. You get into the smaller communities, go outside of the big industrial areas. The earliest Polish church is recognized as the Immaculate Conception from 1854. You have new buildings coming up, very contemporary, very different. And just want to talk for a minute about one in my own hometown. So forgive me that I use references there, but I'm most familiar with it, the Basilica of St. Josaphat. And so the book itself documents all these churches, but I also tell a little bit of the backstory, how the immigrants were able to do this. So St. Josaphat's is modeled after St. Peter's in Rome. It was consecrated in 1901, mainly Kashubian area in Milwaukee, in that area. They had no money. They worked in the tanneries, and the priest was the pastor wanted to build, the congregation was growing. So he heard that there was a U.S. Post Office customs house being torn down in Chicago, arranged with multiple train loads of all the materials, the building materials, to come to Milwaukee. The Polish workers after work would haul these over, and they built this magnificent church. Not only is it stunning on the outside, but inside you get a veritable tour of Polish history with Kościuszko and Pułaski, Polish saints, apparitions of the Blessed Mother in Poland. But even to this day, if you walk up to the main doors, the doorknobs still say U.S. Custom House, U.S. Post Office. So that history continues. Those are the kind of things I included. So once we get beyond, hundreds of churches, like to mention that probably not surprising to anybody, the most common statues that were originally built by that first wave of Polish immigrants were Kościuszko and Pułaski. And, this is around the turn of the century, 1900, 1905. This is when they were all going up. And just about every Polish community had some, whether a guy on a horse or a pedestal of Kościuszko Pułaski. And the Poles had now been here long enough that they were making it, doing well, and they wanted to kind of show off to their other neighbors, the other immigrant groups, that look at these heroes that we have. And it ties them back to their homeland, and also kind of affirms that, yes, we believe in the same values in the country we're living in. So there are pretty magnificent, huge statues all over the country. And, I have about 100 of them documented, and there are others, and I keep learning of them. I try to include kind of the unusual things as well. So I'm thinking in your right hand, you see a double statue. If you look closely, that's Pułaski and Kościuszko together. And those of you who are astute historians out there go, but Ewa, they never met. And that's true. They never did. They were here at the same time, but fought in different battlefields. So I contacted the sculptor. This is, by the way, in Poland, Ohio. You find this. So it's fairly contemporary. And I contacted him and asked, did he realize that this was an anachronism? And he said, oh, yes. But he and the Polish organizers couldn't decide which one, so he decided to do both on the same statue. So that's how you end up with these unusual looking things. And as you know, the immigrants continue to enhance their communities and recognize, for example, in the middle, after World War I, the Great War, there were many monuments built to recognize the contributions of Polish American soldiers in various battlefields. On the left, that's a pretty magnificent statue of Władysław Jagiełło. And this statue is part of another history in Polonia, which in 1939, there was a World's Fair in New York, and Poland had many artifacts on display. And we know what happened in 1939. So as a result, these items, historical items, were not ever sent back to Poland. The government in exile after the war found other locations throughout the country. And so there was a committee that was formed in New York, and this statue resides in Central Park. And there are many items, many of you may have seen them in Chicago at the Polish Museum as well. So we continue to, to add that statue, the painting or the stained glass that looks like it's modeled on Wyspiański, that's in the UN building, recognizing Polish contributions. And I just learned there are even more than I knew about. But as the newer immigrants, the post-World War II in solidarity, they begin to make contributions to the Polish landscape as well, Polish-American landscape, I should say, and recognizing new heroes. And so, for example, there are quite a few Popiełuszko statues. This one happens to be in I believe, in Brooklyn. And then they start going back in history and seeing Polish Americans that had not been recognized in the past adequately. So, for example, this statue is Pola Negri, who was a femme fatale in the silent movies. And looking down on her is a statue of Pope John Paul II, who probably has more statues than actually Kościuszko and Pułaski. But and when I talk about Pola Negri in the book, I not only reference the statue in Los Angeles at the Polish church, but also give you references to the house that Rudo Valentino bought for her, some of her things that are in San Antonio at a Polish chapel, and where she's buried. So there are cross references that you not only see or learn about the particular instance, but also more about that person. And down at the bottom is a fairly contemporary monument in Denver that recognizes many Polish heroes, such as Copernicus and Chopin and Kościuszko, Pułaski, and those. So, just showing that these continue to expand, and the focus is different now. And the Polish American artists are now beginning to get recognized and in the American public arena. So, for example, on the right side, that is Andrzej Patyński's statue in Boston. Not only does he have many things like at the Polish chapel, Polish Bethlehem, Częstochowa in Doylestown, but he also in the public in New York and in Washington, D.C. And as I mentioned, this is in Boston. And Marie Curie starts appearing in a number of statues. And a very contemporary little statue that communities are going back and looking at what their ancestors have contributed to the community, and they're putting up signs and plaques recognizing that. And just on the right, that's another Popiełuszko monument in Connecticut. And this is just a juxtaposition to show you the different ways that Polish American artists are recognizing Polish heroes. So the Kopernik on the right is in Philadelphia. The left one is in Syracuse, New York. It's a graffito on on a wall. And, so, very different approach. More contemporary monuments, of course, dozens of monuments have sprung up across the country, recognizing Patin and the murders there. This particular one is in Niles, outside of Chicago, at one of the Polish cemeteries. And the stained glass, the huge stained glass window on the left is at the Polish Museum. Another one of the remnants of what was from the World's Fair in 1939, and the Polish Museum was the recipient of a number of them. And it's quite a magnificent stained glass window. On the right, that is kind of looking through the grill work at the Polish Room at Wayne State in Detroit. Now, very contemporary on the left this was just a couple of years ago, a Polish-American sculptor in Wisconsin, and in a garden in a public area in northern Wisconsin. It's called For Your Freedom and Ours. And of course, you see Karski beginning. He's got a number of statues around the country. This happens to be where, in DC, where he had been a professor for many years. And as I mentioned, probably equal or greater than Kościuszko and Pułaski, the number of statues of John Paul II, who instilled great pride among Polonia. And not only did the Poles build them, but anywhere he traveled in Central America, there are statues as well. And it's hard to separate those. But I did not try to even begin to count how many JP2 statues we have. As I said, there's things from Canada. Most of those that I showed you before were all US based, but they also in Canada recognize the earliest settlers. And on the right, this is a large Kashubian settlement up in Canada around Barry's Bay. Similarly to the US, they had 5 waves of immigration, and this is a very new monument that recognizes those waves. And because there were a fair number of post-World War II settlers in Canada, it's not surprising to see the commemoration and the statue acknowledging Monte Cassino. When I got done with Canada and US, I was so excited to have found so many, I didn't stop. My intent initially was Canada, US, but I was like, I started finding things everywhere else. I was like, okay, we had this debate. Central America kind of counts as North America too. So I went south and found things in Mexico. Not going to go into detail, but I think most of you have heard of Santa Rosa, where during World War II, the children were brought that had come through Siberia and through India and stuff. They found a home here, settled here duration of the war. And there's plaques here. And kind of an interesting sidebar. While I was working on this, I was able to get in touch with a Polish-American filmmaker in Mexico who had made documentaries of the original children and who came back for reunions. So it just, it was I give that link in the book. Also went out to Haiti. This is a plaque commemorating a massacre in 2018. It's in Polish, English, French, Haitian. I think many of you have heard about the fact that Napoleon sent in troops to quell the rebellion in Haiti, and the Poles who were part of this said, "Wait a minute, we're on their side." They abdicated. Napoleon stayed on, and to this day there are settlements like Cazal that have dark skin, but light hair, blue eyes. And you find a Polish school there where children learn Polish. Also, a grotto dedicated to Our Lady of Częstochowa. So what are the unusual things? I went around Central America and was able to find footprints of Poles in many of the locations. And included what I found. And just in case you think it's all, it's such a serious approach to these monuments, I just want to throw in that, I did include things like Stan Musial, who just got a new plaque. I think this is Stanley Ketchel, who is a Polish-American boxer. This is in Detroit. Also, that Paderewski was a great statesman, politician, pianist, but he was quite well known as being a wine grower, and really making Zinfandel and Merlot very popular. And to this day, his vineyards continue, and they still produce wine with the Polish eagle on it. So. So looking at some of the observations that, from doing this project, I was very pleased to see that by and large, the condition of the monuments and statues is quite good. Community groups in many areas have undertaken restoration and maintenance, which, kind of tells that there's still a pride in this. And of course, no surprises, as we know that the church is closing, consolidating, and the same thing is happening to Polish churches. I mean, actually, just after the book went out, there was a major church that, the wrecking ball came. So unfortunately, the book is obsolete now because things have changed. Also, veterans' homes, which were very popular after World War I, World War II. The veterans are no longer with us, so those homes have fallen into disrepair and are mostly closed down. But things are closing, but things are opening up. There are new churches as the communities have moved outside of the four cities and into the suburbs, new Polish churches. There's a whole impetus of putting plaques up, recognizing that certain Polish Americans have made contributions in this part of the city. And so those are actually quite frequently coming up. And Polish organizations, are engaged in in maintaining these. So I give you, each thing gives you brief overviews, but I do websites as well and further readings. And as I said, you link across, so you not only learn about a site, but you can learn about artists, because I'll tell you where which places they have installations, which churches they've contributed to. So you can come away with a richness in that way. And I know that I've been contacted by genealogists who have found that this has been a good resource for them. And then I've had the opportunity to go into Polish Saturday schools. And I think this is really one area that can be further explored, because it really, as Polish diaspora gets older in the sense that we're further removed from our ancestors, it's easy to forget. And when I've talked to young people, they don't even realize, who's contributed, who in their neighborhood. And so this is an opportunity to use this book to go first into your city, into your area, and then explore as you're traveling to go into other areas. And also for non-Polish. I mean, most of us grew up with some awareness of these things, but I've surprised many non-Poles by showing them this book. They had absolutely no idea. I mean, not, how often do people say, well, Chopin was French, but no. And I just, I think Karen already covered this, so I won't belabor this, but some of the PAHA projects, as I mentioned, and then the Polish American Encyclopedia, the memoirs, and we put out a journal, a scholarly journal. This is the website. I apologize, I did not include the newest initiatives on publishing, and I should have. But this is the QR code that was mentioned by Karen, that our initiative right now is to support young Polish scholars to keep our organization alive and expand it. I could go on, but I think the goal here was to be able to have some questions, have some dialogue. And so I will end this now. And I think Anya will come on now.
Yes. Eva, maybe if you can leave the slides a little bit longer. Yeah, the last slide, especially with
One.
the code, maybe
Okay.
somebody will be interested in donating even the smallest amount of money, $5, $10 to young scholars, some of who are coming from Poland, and there's a lot of fees that they need to pay when coming to our conferences. We'll try to make this QR code more public, so there will be more opportunities, but perhaps Eva moved you in that direction right now. So, Eva, first of all, I'm sorry for interrupting your talk. Clearly, I thought I have command over Zoom. Clearly, I don't. And thank you so much for all the work you've done, the work, the effort, the enthusiasm, but also your love and appreciation for everything Polish is truly inspiring. I would like to start us off with maybe me asking 2 to 3 questions, and then we'll open the floor for the conversation for questions from the audience. If anybody in the audience has a question and would like to type it up, please do so. If not, at some point, we will just ask you to unmute yourself and then ask your question. So let me maybe start with something very basic. What inspired you to revisit this original 1992 edition of this book?
Well, I didn't mention the fact that there had been an earlier, smaller volume, a black and white volume. Part of part of this was PAHA began talking about the fact that, that was what, 40 years old or something like that. We know things have changed in the Polish community. Polish community has been moving out of the old neighborhoods, and question was, what is still there? And what condition are they in? What about the new things? Nobody has documented that. And, as Anya, as you said, my whole life has always been all things Polish. And this was about the time I was retiring, and I thought this would be an interesting project. And I'll just add that about the time I started this project, COVID happened. So doing a travel book during COVID was not exactly a marriage made in heaven, which is why I pivoted and engaged over 200 volunteers in communities. And it became such a rich engagement with people. And the stories I heard were so much more in depth than I could have ever picked up by traveling on my own. So it was just a love of what contributions of Polish Americans, and documenting that and sharing that and instilling pride in so that my children, my children's children would have something to look at and use as a reference source.
Clearly, PAHA and in general, Polish American community is very lucky to have you. And to have somebody with so much love and readiness to do this incredible work. With so many entries covering monuments, churches, different cultural sites across North America, were there any surprising or lesser known location that actually stood out to you? Perhaps there were some compelling stories that you uncovered during your research that stood behind the creation of certain monuments or cultural sites. Perhaps you learn about, the role that Polish communities had played in the establishment of some of these lesser known monuments, churches, cultural sites.
There was a lot. I mean, I was just I'm trying to think of ones that I hadn't mentioned though, but as I mentioned, that we had to limit. So there were so many things that we had to eliminate, and kind of leave it on the floor here, on the cutting floor, and that was always very hard for me not to include something. I wanted to be more inclusive, but just what I mentioned, going, Santa Rosa, for example, in Mexico, making a connection with Polish-American filmmaker who is documenting this. That just added a richness to it. And I couldn't get there, but he was there, so he could talk about the place to me. And then when I saw his documentary, I realized I knew people who had been there, my parents' friends, was able to talk to them about their experience. Now, all of that is not in here, of course, but just seeing the stories around so many of these monuments, and also in a lot of the large cities, the especially at the turn of the century, the organizations that work together to build, let's say a statue of Kościuszko that was, by today's standards would be just astronomical in figures, the collaboration that happened. But when I say working together, then I got stories of, for example, the two oldest churches in Chicago of Saint Stanislaus Kostka and Holy Trinity down the next block, how those two parishes would actually fought, and they would chase the other parishioners with brooms, to get away from their parish. So just interesting stories about all of these. But I was surprised, to find things in Central America. I really did not expect to find anything there.
So we start getting questions in the chat, which I'll read in a second, but I think the questions that are appearing in the chat actually tie nicely to my last question for you. Really two questions. So one is related to the challenges, because I can imagine that working on such a big project, documenting Polish landmarks across such a vast area, that during that process you encountered a lot of challenges. So that will be my first question. And the second one really ties to what's happening right now in the chat. Like, what's next? And here I am reading questions, for example, from John Grodelski. Are you still collecting input? And how to know what points you might have or don't subsequent to the book publication? Richard Wallavander said, congratulations, excellent resource. Are there plans to update the book with further additions? Also, was there any thought of making an online version? Chris Uzdak, are there any plans for a companion website that could be continuously updated? And from Karen Majewski, are there any plans of making an app? So a lot of questions related to what were the challenges, what's next, and really how can the community get engaged? And please keep the questions coming.
Okay, well, the answer to all of that is yes, yes, and yes. There were challenges. As I said, COVID came. I'm locked up, but and I made a map, a physical map to mark where I was going to be going and stuff, and then started reaching out to the Polish community. Organizations responded beautifully, and I happen to know a lot of people across the country because my parents were very involved in Polonia. So I was able to reach out, and my map by the end was just little stickers with names on it and subdividing, like Chicago was subdivided into 3 areas and stuff. So that, and then how to organize, how to collect this, because I didn't want to get a call from Jim Pula reciting his sites. And Jim was a tremendous help. He put me in touch with so many people across the country. But, I had to create a form for people to submit electronically so that it could populate fields for me. This is where my life skills kind of, and keep track of things. And I have to add that at the end, I only mislaid one church, and because it was another St. Stan's, and I had 50 others, and trying to sort like where do you belong, but to track and keep and also clearing copyright issues. And, as I said, coordinating 200 plus volunteers. Some people raised their hand and offered, and then realized that it was going to be work. So they went into the witness protection program and never responded. Others, some of the contributions, I got interesting, some did really nice. I said 200 words, I got 2,000 words, but we work with that. But, I could go on, but we overcame all of these challenges. I think it added depth to the book and made it more interesting. And in terms of next thing, I mean, this book is out in paper, and yes, I've been shamelessly plugging it, but I have to put a caveat that I don't get a single penny from the royalties of this. It all goes to PAHA. This is my love of PAHA, and I'm doing it for PAHA. And it's also available. The best place to get it is through Amazon because it's free shipping, and I think whatever, I didn't look today's price, it's probably reduced. But it's also available as an ebook, but that's static. And so I've been in conversations with some people in Poland of creating an app, making it interactive. I've been looking and collecting other examples of this, of where we could overlay historical photos. We could have more than one photo of a site. I mean, it was so hard of some of these beautiful churches where they have mosaics and sculptures that you want to include more than one photo, but because of space limitations, I mean, as it is, the book is over 300 pages long. Yeah, we could add more to that, and also that you could, as you're traveling, you don't need to have the paper book with you. You could put your, as there are apps already in existence like that, and how to adapt it to this book. So those are the conversations that have begun of how to convert this into something that's much more interactive. And also, well, obviously it'll take people with skills that I don't have, younger people, I'll be working with others in terms of the content. I think there was a question about contributions. I welcome contributions because, as I said, this book is already outdated. People have been sending me personally, things that, I mean, I just this week found out about a new plaque of, and I learned that in Alaska there is a new commemoration for Ralph Modjeski, the architect. I had nothing for Alaska before that. So we were just talking before the meeting that we will put something up on the PAHA website where you can where you can just click on and add information about something. I mean, hopefully you'll look at the book and see, oh, she didn't have that in there. And you can send that in and submit that so that it will then, the publisher has asked if we wanted to go into a new edition. At this point, I think we'll focus on doing the interactive online, that we could dynamically update it because things do change. And I think that's the direction that even when I was doing this, there were a lot of contributors who were saying that that's the way to do it. But the assignment I had with PAHA was to start with a physical book, and we can then move it into the online environment from there. So we've got the database. Now we can move it and make it interactive. I think that kind of answered all the questions.
Yes, I think we have more questions, and I will read the questions that are in the chat. But if there's anybody that would like to ask a question directly, please raise your hand, and we'll give you space, the floor, to answer your question directly. Ewa, there is a question from Anna Sosnowska, and by the way, I do apologize because I do realize that I am sometimes puzzled and I don't know how to read the names that I see. I don't know whether I should like Anglicize them or Polonize them. So I do apologize if I butcher your name. A question from Anna Sosnowska, and I know I read her name right. Thank you for your work. Have you looked at how these material objects are treated by the newer non-Polish inhabitants of the formerly Polish neighborhoods? So my observation from Chicago point to the fact that typically the Mexican communities embrace Polish legacy while Puerto Rican neighborhoods reject it. That's the example from Anna Sosnowska.
The answer is I don't really know. It's kind of beyond my background. Although I can speak to Milwaukee, the neighborhood where our big Kościuszko on the horses is Hispanic American. And we've gone there with exhibits and, and we do commemorations there, and the community comes. I mean, that's where also St. Joseph's is down the block from there, which still is, the Polish community celebrates there. And I agree with Anna that, we find that the Hispanic group, and I really can't distinguish whether it's which group, but they who are living in this neighborhood now have a lot of respect, and they're very interested in learning like about who Kościuszko was and what the Polish community is. So they do embrace that. They're very proud of that in being in their neighborhood. So, but I have not looked at that beyond.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody who would like to ask the question directly? If not, I'll go back to the chat, but perhaps there is a question from the audience. Okay, so let me...
Okay.
Yes, Paweł.
Maybe about that issue with Mexico versus Puerto Rico, right? The two communities. Maybe it is because Mexico is much more Catholic. That's why it's more pro-Polish, than Puerto Rico. Because I think Protestantism is much more popular in Puerto Rico than in Mexico. Maybe it is related to the religious issue.
I think it's related to the history of how Polish communities encountered Mexican communities differently from Puerto Rican communities in Chicago, New York City, maybe also Milwaukee. I'm not sure about that. But I guess your point is also in place. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so we have one more comment and then a question on the chat. The comment from Ted Zawistowski. Recently, I learned of a tiny Polish cemetery in rural Manitoba that has been designated a Canadian historical site, over a century old. There's no question linked to that, but then there is a question from Mark Dillon. Is there an opportunity to create an ongoing list of most endangered Polish sites, places that are tear downs, real estate development, management issues? Do you know of anything like that, Ewa?
I have not heard of any initiative to kind of compile a list of what's going on. I think it would take going into each community because it's not something, I mean, yes, we've all heard about the Katyn memorial and the challenges around that and rezoning and all of that. And we hear about individual churches, but I don't think there's been any systematic approach to cataloging this. I mean, it's a project that's probably worth doing.
Yeah, and there's a follow-up comment from Edith Pula who says that Baltimore's Katyn Monument is celebrating its 25th anniversary. And the site was in an industrial wasteland, which is now the Glittering Harbor East development. It is at the center of the development, the monument. There's also a question whether the encyclopedia, I'm not sure whether that refers to your book, Ewa, is available online to PAHA members as part of the membership fee. And I know that the answer to this question is no. The book is not available to PAHA members as part of the PAHA fees, unfortunately. A question from Teresa Kader. Terrific presentation and book. Thank you, Ewa. Did you include any Polish national Catholic churches?
Yes. There's quite a few. I mean, certainly the main ones. I think, I can't tell you how many, but I made a point of including those as well, especially if they're active and, in the community. So yes.
So now I would encourage anybody who has a question to just unmute yourself and share your question, a comment, good wishes for PAHA, congratulatory notes for Ewa. We are all proud of Ewa, her work, and we are very grateful that she's part of PAHA. And yeah, so maybe this is a moment to hear from you.
Hi, this is Edith Pua. No relation yet to Dr. James, but we're working on it. I know we'll find the connection. Maryland's Polish Heritage Association of Maryland has just started a project called the Maryland Polonia Preservation Project. And I would love to, we're hoping for a grant, but we've started anyway, because as we all know, a lot of these older materials are at risk. People don't know what they have. They're tossing them out. So we're working with the Enoch Pratt Library in Baltimore within their Digital Maryland project. That's our first start, to digitize what we have. But also the histories of these monuments are important as well. So I would love to, at some point, not in this call, get some tips, some techniques, some encouragement even on what will be a pretty significant project. And it's, within the Polish diaspora, Maryland's community is still very vibrant. We have active organizations. We have folks who have come from Poland in the last recent years. Sorry, I have problems with my camera here. So just a comment on that. And the focus here, of course, is on buildings and monuments. Baltimore has several, but just any reaction to this kind of an effort that's happening in 2025 to truly centralize Maryland's Polonia history, including the monuments, of course, but other things as well.
I just want to applaud you for doing that.
Thank you.
In the chat, I'll put my email. You can contact me. But
Thank
when I
you.
was doing Maryland, particularly the Baltimore area, I did notice there were a number of monuments, buildings in particular, that were becoming falling into disrepair, and they were going to be lost. So I think
Yes.
it's very important to document that. And, and the way you're approaching it with the Enoch Pratt Library is excellent, because there you're not limited to pages or number of words like I was. You can really
Right.
expand on the history and capture
And
that.
they have a huge digital scanner.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, am I on or not?
Yes, you are.
Okay, because I don't see an unmute button. Anyway, I would be remiss not to mention a recently in 2023, in June of 2023, a rededication of 59 grave sites of Polish Army veterans in Southfield, Michigan. First one's buried in 1929, the last one in 1962. And thanks to EPN, the Polish government, beautiful monuments. Each one received his own cross, and if you're ever in Michigan, you must come and see it. And it's quite a magnificent sight.
Ewa will be in Michigan actually this coming week. She will be giving a talk at Orchard Lake on Thursday. And
yes, yes, I noticed that. Yes.
And
Well,
then at the also
this-
on Sunday at the Hamtramck Historical Museum. But yes, I learned about that, but it was too late for it to be included in my book. And so those are the kind of things that need to be added.
it's worth seeing, really. Quite an impressive sight. And thank you for your presentation. It's quite a monumental work. Pun intended.
Yeah. Well, I had lots of help, so it's not solo.
so I don't see any comments back. Michał. Okay, Michał, you have we have a comment from Michał.
Thank you. No, this is more of just a comment. Ewa, I just wanted to add also that you had that slide about how readers can use this book, but it's also a really good teaching tool, and I'm actually using it this week. I'm teaching advanced Polish, and we have a unit on Polonia this week, and so we're going to be using it and parsing, like going through it to I'm having the students do mini presentations on sort of not, unknown sort of Polonia population. So I just want to also say, like, thank you for that. Like, it's a very good teaching tool as well, beyond just the tools that you've listed it for. So just a comment.
Thank you. That's great.
Michal, where are you teaching?
I teach at Northwestern.
Okay, great.
Okay. Do we have any other questions, any other comments from the audience?
Well, maybe I have one question. Don't you think that the Polish American community should concentrate much more on promoting Poland's noble culture, literature, constitutional political tradition of the nobility, and much less on the folklore, on the Polish folklore, Polish American folklore?
The one in Maryland, that's exactly what we do. We have a book club that does contemporary and traditional Polish literature, everything from Sienkiewicz to Tokarczuk. We do art and music presentations and so forth. There's another club around the corner where we meet, the Polish Home Club, that we call them, we love them all, we're members, but they're the Hupai Shupai, and our group is more of presenting the culture and the history and the Nobel laureates, etc. There's a place for all of it, and in Baltimore we really try to keep a balance with it.
Thank you.
Yeah, can I step in here because I have pretty strong feelings about this. Edith, I agree with you that there is a place for all of this, and the place of the Polish American Historical Association is to document the diaspora, not
Right.
Polish history divorced from whatever permutations and development that it underwent in the diaspora. So there are plenty of organizations that deal with Polish history, with Polish culture, with Polish literature. I point you to PAHA, for instance, to the Pilsudski, to the Kościuszko Foundation. But PAHA is unique in turning our focus onto the diaspora communities and the unique culture that they created and continue to create that encompasses, as Edith said, the working class, cohort, the post-war cohort, the 1980s cohort, that all of those deserve respect and documentation. So this, I think, is PAHA's unique mission and the vitally important, because we're the only one, the vitally important, the role that we can create, in documenting without looking down our noses at at working class immigrants or at their cultural creation. So while I understand, Paweł, the importance of recognizing Polish high culture and Polish achievements that are recognized worldwide, I think that we have a special obligation as scholars and as members of the diaspora to honor all the different components that have made up this vastly complicated and interesting and creative series of communities that we call Polonia.
And that's how Maryland is kind of looking at it. We've got people like me who, I'm a granddaughter of immigrants. In fact, I live in the house in Baltimore that my grandparents built and where my mother was born, in the old Polish neighborhood still. But I observed as a child that group, then those who were coming over. I was born in 57, so I still saw people who were displaced persons, and then you had the group in the 80s, and then you have all of these different cohorts and very different aspects to the community, but still part of one Polonia, one diaspora.
Yeah, could I comment on your statements? Yeah, I agree that we should respect all of the elements of the Polish American culture. However, the most important Polish Americans, the most famous Polish Americans, they derive from the nobility. The first pioneers, right? Zambrowski, they were Protestant, not only Catholics. And also, Kościuszko, Pułaski, some important personalities from in the 19th century, right? Who fought during the Civil War for both sides, right, of the struggle. They derive also from the nobility. So maybe because of that, right, we should promote more. We should concentrate more on the Polish nobility, on the culture of the nobility or tradition.
Well, Paweł, we welcome you to contribute some works on that. We'd appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Karen and Co, might I have a second? David Chambers.
Of course, yes. Please go ahead.
Oh, thank you. In spirit of what Karen was mentioning, I have been researching a Polish American named Leo Koszycki, who seems a leftist in the 30s, a prominent union leader in his day. And I presented to the National Labor History Conference last fall, and I'm writing an article for a European publication. But in the spirit of what Karen was saying, I wonder if any of you are interested at all in Polish American leftists in the 30s and 40s and their demise. They're chasing out by the House Un-American Activities Committee, et cetera, in the late 40s. And as disclaimer, I should add, I'm a grandchild of Whittaker Chambers from the Hiss case. So that's how I'm coming at this.
Karen, would you like to answer this question? Or
yeah, I would just want to say yes.
Yes.
Yes, please, more.
I would say very much so. And actually, we had a number of presentations during our last PAHA presentations on, not actually on Leo Koszycki, although we would love to have a presentation on Leo Koszycki from you, but on topics related to Polish leftists. I am particularly interested in this. I've just started a project on Polish left, Polish American left socialist sympathies or sentiments. So we would love to be in touch. We would love to participate in our conferences. Also, maybe engage in a dialogue with some of us.
I welcome it. Please, I need help. I don't speak Polish. I'm new to Polish, kind of everything except from general history. I'm just blown away by it all, loving it, but I'm really floundering. I've met up with a couple scholars in Poland who are helping me as well, but it turns out this guy was such a super connector as Amalgamated Clothing Workers under Sidney Hillman, and CIO, and the CIO PAC, and the American Slav Congress, American Polish Labor Council, and WFTU member behind the Iron Curtain who met Joseph Stalin. I mean, it's a crazy story. And it's so many different leads. It's quite a challenge to go beyond what Judge Don Bienkowski did, which was amazing effort, but basically unedited and raw material that really needs sifting through. So welcome, folks. I'm very easy to find online, and I'm very interested in working with people, collaborating, etc. And I'd be happy to present.
Wonderful. I shared with my email address with you on chat, on your private message. If
Thank you.
You wouldn't mind getting in touch with me, it will be, yes, I could introduce you to share the call for papers to begin with, and also share the email addresses to people in our circles that are working on similar topics. Karen, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
Oh
interrupt.
yeah, no, I was just gonna point out that, hearing from Pavel and hearing from David just, reminds me how many blank spots there still are in our history and how many stories there still are to be told. Those are only a couple. I can think of many more off the top of my head. So there's a lot of research yet, a lot of opportunity for scholarship, a lot of opportunity for your own interests, for you to be met with your own research. So yeah, this is a really vibrant and open field for work.
Do we have any more comments and questions? Okay, so I think it's if we don't have any more comments, this was very, very, first of all, thank you, Eva, for a wonderful presentation. Thank you all for comments and questions. We are recording this, so we will share the recording on our website and on our Facebook page, and we will probably also send you a link to the recording once it's up. It's wonderful to know that there is this community of people that are interested in Polish and Polish American history and Polish American matters. And we are hoping to continue this year with webinars of this sort every other month, maybe every month. We will keep you on our mailing list and we will keep you informing about our webinars. And now we have a new visitor to our webinar, this beautiful kitty cat. Karen, would you like?
Molly says hello.
Okay, so I think I will pause recording. Thank you very much. If you would like to stay a little bit longer after I ended, ask questions, just hang out, please do so.